Hello and welcome to Halcyon Blink. My name is Leonides. I'm going to be your host for this episode. And on this edition I want to talk about a game that is almost 5 years old to the day of this recording. GTA 5, a game that has revolutionized the way that gaming has been perceived by the mainstream media, given its obscene levels of success at release and its continued success through GTA Online in the intervening years. The reason why it's taken me so long to complete this game, however, is I had it originally in 2013 towards the back end of December. Fortunately though, encountered a game-ending bug that would not allow me to get past the mission where you go to Michael's mansion shortly after Madrazo's wife has been kidnapped. So back in the days when it was unthinkable to install and reinstall a game to fix a bug, I put it to one side and forgot all about it. A couple of years later, or rather 3 or 4 years later, it was on sale on the Xbox One Live store, so I thought I'd pick it up and give it a whirl. Unfortunately, about 2.5 hours in, the same goddamn thing happened again.
In the quiet words of the Virgin Mary, come again.
Game-breaking crash, couldn't go into any shop, any store without the game completely flipping out on me and losing all stability and being unable to continue the game. So while yes, of course, this was mildly annoying to say the least, it has to be said that I'm really glad I finally got around to playing this game. If only for the fact that I used to love playing GTA games for just the fun of it. Vice City was one of those games I used to just throw in and just mess around in. Never used to really be all that considerate about playing the story mode or doing any of the challenges. I just liked popping in the cheats, finding a really fast car, provoking the police, and going on a car chase and going on a rampage once the car invariably flips, goes in the water, or blows up.
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! Just a flesh wound.
So what's my take on the game? Well, if you play it as a casual and you just play through the story missions, it feels ridiculously short. And I feel like there should have been more opportunities taken in the story mode to explore the map, because one thing that stood out about me from this game is no matter how big it seemed, and it is a vast expanse of space, it never felt overwhelmingly large. I always felt it was easily traversable, either using the cab mechanics, which acts as this game's fast travel, or just being able to hop in a car and cruise down the way, because like Red Dead Redemption, you've got the quick time events, these seemingly random encounters that will allow you new heist companions, or just random opportunities for cash. You can either stop a mugging and give the money back, or you can stop the mugging and keep the money and run off. Seems perfectly reasonable criminal activity to me, considering you run the person over or shoot them in order to get the money back anyway. You might as well go the full 9 yards and take the cake for yourself. We're going to talk about some of the things that I liked about the story. I liked how each of the characters represented, in effect, a different phase of the GTA universe. I felt that Michael represented the Tommy Vercetti style of gaming that was made famous in Vice City, that gangster lifestyle, albeit obviously tamed down to a certain extent with the involvement of his family and being a bank robber rather than an out-and-out gangster.
Alright, everybody pays attention, no one gets hurt. Go! Open the door! They'll get worse than hurt!
A few moments later.
He's a good kid? A good kid. Why? Does he help the fucking poor?
Franklin is CJ in effect. Considering that the actors who play them are both cousins, that may be why there's a tenuous link between the two, but I felt that Franklin was the most grounded, the most relatable, the most likeable out of the lot, even though he has a weird love interest situation with this girl called Tanisha, who you don't see a lot of throughout the game, only towards the end when she implores you to go and save Lamar, another character who I found annoying as fuck.
What's up, fool? Who you calling a nigga?
No, I'm not calling nobody a nigga.
Wait, what the fuck?
I mean, N-word. That's not cool, man. I don't say that.
You fucking right, and you better keep it right, because this man right here, he's an international businessman, a multiculturalist.
Albeit up to a certain point when he was questioning Trevor and his ridiculous look on life, considering his own ridiculous looks on life, there was a nice little barrage of logic that they were employing against each other, which ultimately led Trevor to maybe reconsider some of his actions a little bit. Oh, and speaking of Trevor, perhaps the most entertaining character at first, but the one that became the most annoying towards the end because he's psychopathic, he's a wild dog.
I've been in witness protection. I still am.
That's great. That's great. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Where are my manners, right? Amanda, it is good to see you. Oh, I missed you. You used to be fatter. Nice new tits, by the way. Who are you?
Namaste. I'm Fabian.
Good Lord.
But I still couldn't find anything that I thought was lovable about him, anything that was endearing about him, and I thought that maybe that's what this game was missing in terms of an overall story, was that one character that stands out for you as being the one you put your arm around and go, now this is my boy, this is the guy right here. Franklin, even though you can tell he's meant to be the hero of the story, given that he's given the main choice at the end of the game, I didn't think he was particularly likable or enjoyable to play as beyond he was the gangster style type game player. He had that type of story mission. He started out as the most humble and the most reasonable of the three. But beyond that, he's probably the one you're supposed to project yourself onto most, and I found it to be somewhat disappointing.
What you saw the other day was a guy dealing with pests.
I guess I never saw myself as just a fucking pest.
Well, and today's lesson's all about humility. Tomorrow we'll try a training montage.
A training what?
Nothing.
And I think the one thing about this game that's really, really easy to abuse, considering that there's no such thing as cheats in this game, there's nothing you can employ to try and get ahead apart from the microtransactions, which we'll get to later on. But the cop, the wanted mechanic, it's changed for this game. In previous installments, you either had to use a cheat, which was always my preferred course of action, or you had to get to a pay and spray shop to pay for them to lift the wanted stars. In this game though, they employ a mechanic where so long as you lose the line of sight of the police for long enough, you lose the wanted level. This has a double-edged sword. Sometimes it works really, really well. Other times it works not so well. Sometimes it doesn't work so well in the sense that when you get a high enough wanted level, the police start using helicopters, and if you're in the middle of the desert, there's no way you're avoiding the helicopters because you've got two choices. You're going to get out and shoot them down, at which point you're inviting the police on the ground to come and get you, or you have to keep running until you can find a tunnel or a cave or somewhere obscuring the vision of the helicopters to try and get away from you, which can be tricky at times again when you're in an open wasteland. The converse to this as well is that sometimes it's almost ridiculously easy to lose the police in a city, for instance. You literally turn a corner, get out of your car, get under some cover, and suddenly the police have no idea where you went whatsoever. Add to this what I think was a realistic take on how damage is accrued. This game is almost frustratingly hard not to die sometimes. You'll take an errant shot to the dome, you'll jump, miss time or miscue a jump sequence and fall flat on your face, killing yourself instantly. You'll be in Franklin's mode using his special powers I'll touch on in a second, but you'll be streaming along at 150,000 miles an hour, hit a lamppost and die instantly. It can be very frustrating at times, but at the same time I understand that there was a degree of realism that they were employing here as opposed to previous games where it was more cartoony, more lunaticish. This time they were going for realism. Speaking of the powers, it does have an interesting dynamic to gameplay. Franklin has the ability to slow down time when driving, making it more accurate and easier to drive. Michael has the ability to slow down time when in gunfights, being able to pick people off, kind of like the Red Dead Redemption mechanics to slow down time and use Deadeye only without the auto lock. And Trevor has the ability to heighten his senses and get amped up, and he does more damage and he takes more damage as he goes on some sort of rampage.
It's over 9,000! What, 9,000?
But again, ironically enough, out of the three, Franklin was the one I used the most, his power, because it was the most useful. Michael's gun mechanic wasn't really all that useful when you've bought all the heaviest weapons and you don't really need to worry about slowing down time. It's only really useful in the story missions when he only has a pistol and he's up against people with body armor. What I will also say about this game is that each character has abilities that they can level up, so flying, driving, shooting, etc., strength, stamina, all the rest of this jazz. It's not mission critical for you to get any of these stat buffs. There's a mission in which Trevor asked Michael to go and take flying lessons. I did the mission without doing any flying lessons just to see if I could. It didn't affect the mission in any way, shape or form.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
So the fact that the game seems to overlook the fact that they have all these stats was a little, it seemed like a false choice and a false equivalency to previous games, like in San Andreas, for instance, where some of these stats do make a tangible difference to how you drive, how long you can hold your breath, etc. We'll also say that the random encounters, the strangers and freaks missions do help to pad out the game a little bit, but I only felt that this was really worthwhile at the end of the game. I also felt that property buying element to this game, again, was somewhat lacking. I keep wanting one of these games to give us more what we had in Vice City, where you bought a structure and then you had to do missions for that structure to get more money and to improve it over and over again, but sadly not really the case. You can do missions for these businesses, but really it's just to make sure that you've got a weekly income coming in. There's nothing really all that interesting about them. Stranger and Freak missions, in particular for Trevor, seem to be the most fun because they're characters that seem to be more in line with his psychotic nature. And I do really like the fact that you can switch between the characters mid-roam if you're getting bored of one particular character or one particular character's set of stories. It's nice to be able to interchange, but ultimately it doesn't make that much of a difference to the gameplay, so I feel like this is maybe, again, a choice that adds more cosmetic value than anything else in being able to switch from character to character. Overall now, I've gotten to the point, having completed the game, where I'm at the end. I've got my hundreds of millions of dollars, having invested it in the stock market, which you can do, but considering it's been played to death since, everyone's got the best strategies for getting $2.1 billion. So you can just buy up all the properties and spend all your money on improving your cars and buying all the best guns and so on and so forth. I will say though that the end game seems to be a bit better than previous games. There does still seem to be a lot to do. Every time I'm playing the game, I'm uncovering new stuff to play. So for replay value alone, this game holds up because you can replay the game again in various different ways. There's multiple endings, there's multiple choices in different missions. There's different ways to approach the missions as well. You can prep things differently, and the bank robberies are the most fun element of this game. It's just a shame there's not more of them, which is why the online component is so important, and it's why I'm going to ignore it, because I don't do online gaming. You should know this by now if you watch my channel. So overall, I want to give this game a really, really high 8 out of 10. Just falling short because, again, the relatively repetitive nature of the gunplay, which doesn't seem to have improved much from Red Dead Redemption or GTA 4. The fact that the driving can sometimes feel either overly sensitive or undersensitive, it really depends on cars. You don't really have a feel for it. The fact that the story missions don't live up to the hype as much as I would have liked. The fact that the game feels short based on the story without going into the surrounding missions of Strangers and Freaks, which I don't really count towards that. And the fact that it had 2 game-breaking crash bugs, whatever you want to call them, nearly 4 years apart, having had 1,000,001 years to patch it with all the money in the world, is somewhat disappointing, so drags it down a little bit, but it is still a supremely well polished and extremely detailed experience. And if you've never played GTA 5, or if you've been wondering if you should pick up the new high HD definition or playing it through in single player mode, the first person mode I should say, I would say it's well worth the punt. I think I spent £15 on it this time around as opposed to the £54 that they're selling it for. I wouldn't waste time with all that Megalodon £8, £30, £50 expansion bollocks, because, well, why should you spend more on a game that's been out for 4 or 5 years? So thanks very much for watching this episode of Halcyon Blink. Please like, share, subscribe. Check out some of the other content creators in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, and as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Halcyon Blink.